How well does Cloudflare Pages support Next.js? Honestly, the results weren't what I was expecting. I had difficulty even getting my app to build on Cloudflare Pages. I had to make specific changes to get my app to even work on Cloudflare Pages, let alone test how it supports Next.js. So a little bit of background on my app. I've built an app that tests 13 of the most important features of Next.js, and I've put Cloudflare Pages to the test. I'm trying to deploy this application on different hosting providers to see how well they support Next.js, what features they do, what features they don't support. So this is a Next.js Pages architecture application built with version 13.4.16, and I'm attempting to do just out-of-the-box deployments to different hosting providers, but with Cloudflare Pages, I wasn't able to do that. I had to make changes in order to even get my app to build inside of Cloudflare Pages. So let's look at what I had to do to deploy the application, and then let's run the Cypress tests against that deployed application to see what features of Next.js it supports. Features from static site generation, server-side rendering, API routes, image optimization, ISR, and recently added on-demand ISR, as well as other features of Next.js. So the first thing that I ran into when looking up Cloudflare Pages and its support for Next.js was this documentation. Deploy a Next.js site, and this is on developers.cloudflare.com. I'll have the link in the description below. But I was immediately overwhelmed. I had a long list of things that I didn't want to read. So I will admit I did not read all of this because I didn't want to. It started off with create your project using the Cloudflare latest for Next.js, and I did not do that. I wanted to do create Next app like probably many of you have done. That is how we've been recommended to create Next.js app, is using that create Next app, the CLI, not Cloudflare Pages. So I skipped most of this, and that is why my application did not build initially. The biggest thing that I came up to was the Edge runtime support. All server-side routes in your Next.js project must be configured as Edge runtime routes. When running on Cloudflare Pages, you must add export const runtime edge to each individual server route. So let me figure this out. Do I need this on API routes? Do I need this on all my server routes? And what it also means is we're limited to the Edge runtime. So let's take a peek at what the Edge runtime is. Vercel has some documentation on the Edge runtime, and what it really comes down to is this section under supported APIs. The Edge runtime provides a subset of web APIs such as fetch, request, and response. This lightweight API layer is built to be performant and execute code with minimal latency. Down here we have the list of all the supported APIs, so you can take a peek at what there is there, and there's quite a bit of functions and supported APIs there, but not everything is supported. This is a subset of the web APIs, so we don't have everything available to us. So that's something important, and I haven't really looked at my application. I'm not using anything too advanced here, mostly just fetch in my API and server-side routes. So I think I'll have full support, but it's something to be aware of that Cloudflare Pages is only supporting the Edge runtime for its server-side routes. So that's something pretty important to realize, that you are limited to the APIs available to you. Maybe that's perfect for you. Maybe this more performant and smaller minimal latency API layer is perfect. But that was the first thing I ran into. So let me actually try and deploy my application without making any changes to it. I'm going to use a Cloudflare Pages branch, and we can see what happens, and then we can look at making the changes. So heading into Cloudflare, this is my Cloudflare dashboard, and I've switched it to the dark theme, which you can see over here, like a create an application. It's kind of in beta, I believe, the dark mode. So I'll roll with it here, but I really like the dark mode better than light mode. So let's create a new application. We're in the worker and pages section on the left, and we're going to create an application, and we're going to create pages. We're working with Cloudflare Pages. I'm going to connect my Git repository. This is the host check Next.js. Begin setup. So I just pushed that branch. Is it going to, oh, it is really quick to pick that up. So that's perfect. Production branch, Cloudflare Pages. Right now, that's just a complete replication of the main branch. I haven't made any changes yet to it. I'm going to use this, where's our Next.js? Not a static HTML export. We're using just the standard. This is because we want it to be that full stack Next.js, not just a static export. I'm not going to make any changes here to the build commands. No environment variables, nothing there. So I will save and deploy. And now let me just speed this up until it fails, because we don't need to watch all of this. We don't need to wait here for all of this. Okay, so our build failed. It took just about just over a minute, and it did fail. Deployment failed due to an error. Let's look down at the logs here. We can see, please make sure all of your non-static routes export the following Edge runtime route segment config. Needs to be using the Edge runtime, not the Next.js or standard runtime. And it gave me all of these routes. The following have not been configured. Oh, JSON. Why are these JSON files coming up in here? All right, so get Pokemon, hello, revalidate SSR, dynamic pages, internationalization. So really every single feature page. So let me make those changes and we'll come back here and try to deploy this again. Boy, that's a lot of pages. Start at the top, get Pokemon. And what it wants is that export const runtime page. If you did not build your app with this intention, then it will be difficult. All right, internationalization. So that's every file that it had listed there for me. So let's commit all these. I'll just stage them all, but take out these. Let's see, stage them all. I don't want the Cypress config or README in here for these changes. And then Cloudflare Edge runtime support here. Get that. All right, heading back over to Cloudflare Pages. We're failed, so let's go back to change settings. Make sure that it's still Cloudflare Pages, and let's see, save and deploy. Let's make sure, yeah, Cloudflare Edge runtime is the new new commit that it's using off of the Cloudflare Pages branch. So I will speed this up, and we'll see, does this pass or fail now that we've made those changes? Oh boy. All right, we failed again, and this time is because the npm run build failed. So let me actually try that locally and see what comes up. So I want to run the npm run build command locally in VS Code and see what results come back. Why does it not? Build error. On-demand ISR runtime edge in runtime for rendering is currently experimental. Use experimental edge instead. All right, so is that specific to the on-demand ISR page? Or is that going to be more pages? So making more changes, experimental edge rather than just edge. That wasn't told to us by Cloudflare Pages. Running a quick build again. We want the dynamic route to use experimental edge as well. So this is going to just be one at a time. I will not probably show too much more of this until I can get the npm run build working, seeing what pages that it wants to have the experimental edge versus regular edge, because this is, all right, so after changing everything to experimental edge, we got it to finish the build at least, but I do want to make you note, there are now warnings that experimental edge should be edge in at least the files under the API folder, and now git static props is not fully supported with experimental edge, so git static props and experimental edge don't go well together. That's what it told me to do. So it's not fully supported, so we're now in a weird, not fully supported warning state just to try and get our build working on Cloudflare Pages. So let me stage these changes, pull these away, and get this committed. And we're going to just say experimental edge. Push that, and see if this will build in Cloudflare Pages. Now it is experimental edge. We're picking up that latest change of experimental edge now. So let's... I will bring this back once the build is finished, and we can see if it passes or fails. All right, phew. We got a successful build. Your site was built and deployed. So with the changes now to experimental edge, and I believe that it has to do with the versionings of Next.js that I'm using. So check on your versions of Next.js whether or not you can get this deployed in what version of experimental edge versus edge you need on your pages. But wait, there's more. So if I go to this deployed page, I get a Node.js compatibility error. No Node.js compatibility flag has been set. Again, it's probably somewhere in here. I believe it is in here. It's the Next.js documentation on how to deploy. I was overwhelmed just looking at it, so I didn't read it. So I need to set this Node.js compatibility flag inside of my compatibility settings. So let's change that. I'm not sure what it's doing, but I do know that I need it. All right, so I found where I needed to go. There is a more details button here, and in the Cloudflare dashboard, go to the Pages project and navigate to the function settings page. So by clicking on this, it takes me to my overview again. I can click on my site, Then there's a settings, and down here are functions. So that's compatibility flags. Whew, oh my gosh. I am blind or just having a lot of difficulty here. So compatibility flags, we're going to set this for both environments. And now, does that automatically change our page? F5, no. Redeploy, view details, and I am going to retry deployment with the new changes there. Sorry everyone for how long this is taking just to get it deployed, but we are getting there. So this is going to build the application, hopefully deploy it with that new compatibility flag. But I do want to just make sure, just clarify everyone, this Next.js application that I'm testing, I'm really just looking at trying to get Next.js features tested. I'm not trying to test performance of different hosting providers, the other features on top of just hosting that they provide, like Cloudflare has their CDN, which is amazing. So maybe their speeds are amazing. I'm just trying to test Next.js feature support. So this is not necessarily me saying that the speeds or performance or anything else about Cloudflare is bad. This is just I'm having a not so fun experience getting my application deployed. We haven't even tested the feature support, but with it not supporting anything other than the Edge runtime, I'm a little concerned about maybe future viability of that. But we will get this tested. And I did run into their image optimization. I did start reading this since I had some free time while I was waiting for the builds. They do not have, where is it? The image component. Out of default, Cloudflare does not support image optimization like the Vercel network or other hosting providers. So they recommend Cloudflare images, and I'm not really sure what pricing model this has or how that fits in. So we'll see what image optimization comes back as, but I'm not super stoked on how that's going to come back. But now, okay, so this one passed now. So if I go back, the host check Next.js, can I check this page? Phew. Okay, host check Next.js.pages.dev is a valid site. We have things working here. Get server-side props is working. Get static props is working there. Okay, so we got some pages working. We're now at a point where we can test it. I've written all those Cypress tests that we can have automated testing against us. So let's get those automated tests running against this deployed solution and see what results come back. So inside of VS Code, I will run Cypress or npm run Cypress open, and that should bring up the Cypress window, EDE testing, Chrome, and we have 13 specs now. If you remember, I had 12 in the last video. We have added the on-demand ISR testing where we're using that revalidate function inside of Next.js to revalidate a endpoint when we want, rather than waiting for ISR to revalidate it for us. I do need to change in the Cypress config. We need to make our change here so we can testing against that proper URL. Now we can run all our specs and see what comes back. So quite a few failures in here. API route support, image optimization, Sitecore JSS image optimization, I'll typo there, gotta fix that. On-demand ISR support as well. So it looks like almost most things that have to do with API route support. So that's kind of the base thing here, because image optimization I knew was gonna fail based on their documentation. Now you can use your own custom loader, and that might be free or avoid using Cloudflare images, but that's their recommendations, Cloudflare images. But it does look like off the top, we can see the image original size 154, optimized sized 154, so it was not optimized in that sense. But going back, API route support. So what we just never timed out. Did it ever come back? It looks like it did eventually. No, that's a different test. Head into here, API routes. It doesn't work. It's not coming back. My data is not coming back. Looking at the feature, we are using a use effects. This is even just client side. We're making a call to our API route. So we have that get Pokemon API route that we're calling to. And inside of here, we're doing a fetch. So I thought fetch was working in the experimental edge, but it's not. But interestingly enough, const runtime equal experimental edge, but const config equals edge. So is that working? The edge API route edge runtime, that one is working. This one uses the config setting the runtime to edge, while the standard API route, the actual API route is using const experimental edge. So maybe if I had said experimental edge here, but again, this is now not a standard API route. This is supposed to be an edge API route. This is funky. I don't like Cloudflare Pages support for Next.js. That's what I'm going to say at the moment. Out of the box, it does not support standard API routes. You're going to have to make changes to run things on the edge, like our ISR pages. Those are running now in edge runtime rather than standard runtime. Does not support image optimization out of the box, which is huge, hugely important for any optimized site. You really need to have those optimized web images, and just having a provider that does that for you is probably a whole lot easier and a whole lot less complex. And on-demand ISR is not working because that relies on an API route. So I'm just seeing a lot of features here that aren't fully supported or require changes or different development practices in order to even get them to work or get them to kind of work on Cloudflare Pages. So at the moment, I am not recommending Cloudflare Pages for Next.js hosted sites. Maybe it'll be perfect for you if you are already using their image service and you really want to be only on that edge runtime. But I'm just seeing a lot of complexity added here that, I don't know, based on my tests previously with Azure Static Web Apps and AWS Amplify, I'd rather take those services because of the easier support out of the box for Next.js compared to Cloudflare Pages. So with that though, if you want to test out Cloudflare Pages with different versions of Next.js, or if you want to try out getting this to work or using this branch that I have for the Cloudflare Pages specific deployment, head over to the host check Next.js GitHub page. This will be linked in the description below as well. If you do head over here, please give it a star in the top right here. You can test out different versions of Next.js, add more features, make a PR, and I can see those changes for you. But this is open source. I want to continue testing other providers. Make sure to let me know what other providers you're interested in hearing about. If this video was helpful for you, please leave it a like. That helps me out a lot, encourages me to keep making videos like this. Also subscribe so you can keep up with the other hosting providers that I'm going to be checking in the future and other updates to my application. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like. Thanks.